Uncharted, Roll Camera, and Horizon Forbidden West. This is Staying In.
Is that too high? So I go me.
No, I'm right. I want to be up here, please.
Okay, here we go.
Pete can do falsetto, so Pete's pretty good.
Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Daniel. Happy birthday to you.
Wow.
Wow, I closed my eyes there, so I could imagine what it was like to be kind of a listener. And it's like one of those like wave patterns where like every now and again, like the notes intertwine, and then very quickly they leave each other again.
Yeah.
And it just kind of it's very inconsistent speed, pitch, but a few moments, it's just beautiful. Thank you for that.
How was your day, Daniel?
I had a lovely day. I was spoilt rotten. We had some family rounds, had some nice food, had some lovely presents. It's been a lovely day. I've got this week off, so I thought I'd treat myself to a birthday week. I'm going to take my little boy to the cinema for the first time tomorrow. We're going to go see a double bill of Superworm and Zog. I looked everywhere to see if Encanto was on the cinema, but alas, it is not, because that would have been a winner. But so I thought I'd take him to the cinema, get him hooked with something that he kind of already knows anyway. So
Dan, you'll be able to buy the those family deals at the cinema with a young one in tow.
We'll see. I will be getting a small popcorn, and he can have one or two if he likes.
One or two popcorn. You can have one or two. One at the start, one at the end, and one in the middle.
Sorry, hold on. I don't think we can let that slide. A small popcorn.
I only get small. Ever get small? I always get the smallest possible one.
Firstly, small at a cinema in no way means it's small, because it's not.
Yeah, Dan's right.
Also, the film, in inverted commas, because it's just 2 30-minute things, is an hour long, so I don't need like a full 2 hours worth of popcorn.
I always go large, regardless of.
I mean, that's basically you need another seat for a large.
Yeah, you do. I went to the cinema with my parents-in-law once. We went to go and see Murder on the Orient Express.
Fun.
Good film to go and see with the in-laws. They hadn't been to the cinema in a long time. So they went, and I just said to them, just get a medium popcorn, medium drink. Yeah. But my parents-in-law, they're just like, yeah, but you can upgrade to large for just 30p. And I was like, no. And I was just like, okay, go and do it. And I literally turned around to find my father-in-law holding 1.5 liters of Coke and this massive, like, within the first 10 minutes, he was like, I need to go to the toilet. And they both walked out with pretty much a whole popcorn between them because they just made no dent in the popcorn. It was great.
That's amazing. Went to go and see. Who's the lad who did King Kong?
Peter Jackson.
Yeah. Do you know he did? He did some restoration of like World War I footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about it on this show.
Yeah. Did I tell you that there was a? Did I tell you that like I got there with a friend of mine? We sat down. This pair behind us were just scoffing minstrel and popcorn at the same time. I'm just like, this is worse. Like, I was like, sorry, this isn't. I got so close to being, disgruntled of Tunbridge Wells. I got so close to turning around and saying something. Like, I actually turned to the guy who was with me. I said, shall I say something? Shall I say something about this? Because this feels not good. Like, if this was the Care Bears movie, fine, have a popcorn. If this is like some, like, I don't know, Jaws. What are we on? 4, 5? If whatever.
What
Jaws
are we
movie,
on? The continuing franchise that is Jaws.
Right, or Fast and the Furious. Fast and the Furious, right? Fine, have your popcorn. But this is like expertly restored World War I footage showing the horrors of war, and you've got these people like, oh, I love sweet and salty.
Or dulce decorum est.
The thing is, if you did turn around and complain, they'd just go, Well, they died for the freedom that I could do what I want.
Yeah, exactly. So, Pete, are you saying that the genre of the film determines what can be consumed in the cinema when watching said film?
For sure.
Wow.
Like, first of all, there is no genre of film in which it is acceptable to consume nachos during it. They just haven't come up with a genre
Chris
yet.
Darby.
That's a Derby power play, basically. Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely some genres where it's, if you have like a really nice, really tense, creepy thriller, right? Like where you're kind of on the edge of your seat all of the time. What you don't want is like,
Well, surely a film like that is your quintessential kind of traditional one to have popcorn in it. You have that vision of people like having like the scares and the popcorn being thrown up in the air because they've made them jump and stuff like that. That's your kind of the quintessential viewpoint of a going to the cinema. Going to the cinema, you have popcorn.
but maybe some like high-end drama, right? Like with some thriller where there's like proper high-end drama. You don't want that. I'd accept a Magnum.
Magnum's a good choice. The silent snack.
Yeah, basically, the genre of the film dictates the sort of decibel level of the snack that is permissible within that genre.
It's why they sell ice creams at the theatre. You don't get much rustly stuff at the theatre. It's all the silent snacks, like, ham sandwich, pre-moistened crisps. They got it going on.
They're not giving out bowls of Rice Krispies, are they?
Pete, is there a genre that it's impossible to eat anything?
World War One restorative documentaries.
I mean, that is a niche genre.
I would say documentary if it's a really serious subject, right?
Okay.
And then the flip side of that would be like a movie where you have to eat something. A genre where...
So what, like an eat-along?
Yeah.
Get a marathon film.
If you
watching
are...
Lord of the Rings extended all the way through.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to chew along to it.
Yeah, like if you weren't consuming something, you'd be thinking,
potatoes!
I look
Everyone get your potatoes out!
Yeah, exactly. Like a genre of film where like if you're sat there and you're not consuming something, you're sort of thinking, I look like an idiot.
I've only ever taken in, like, smuggled in, like, maybe a can of Coke and a bag of popcorn and a couple of bags of Haribo. Like, nothing heavy. Like, I have been in the cinema when some people have smuggled in a whole bucket of KFC chicken. And like
They start lighting candles and laying out a tablecloth.
Yeah, I've been in the cinema where someone's walked in with like a bag of Nando's and a big drink and just yeah, definitely. Like, and I was just going to ask if you ever taken hot food in, just not like bought a hot dog or a
No.
I remember as a teenager.
Of course, Chris is taking
taking
hot food.
Yeah, of course he
School
has.
trip, and we had some time to kill in the evening. We were staying somewhere. We went to see Austin Powers Goldmember, and I distinctly remember cramming KFC popcorn chicken into my jeans pocket.
Loose.
Yeah, loose.
Oh.
And I could feel it burning, singeing I had these really weird burns on the top of my thighs. Worth it, though.
Worth it.
Worth it.
I don't worth it.
Sure. I've got third-degree burns, but it is that secret blend of herbs and spices.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so this is Uncharted, which is, for those who aren't aware, a film adaptation that has been in development hell for like well over a decade or so.
Yeah, probably.
Lots of different names being bandied around in terms of who would be in this film. Probably one of my favourites was Joe Pesci was rumoured to be Sully at one point, which made a very different film.
Brilliant. Oh,
David O.
God.
Russell was attached at one point to be a director. There was like fans asking for Nathan Fillion to take on the role because in many people's heads he is Nathan Drake, and it wasn't that long ago that we had that short fan film which had him as Nathan Drake.
Tom Holland in a recent interview made the joke that at one point Mark Wahlberg was in place to play Nate, but it took so long to make the film he aged up appropriately so he could play Sully.
Well, no, I saw something similar, Sam. Actually, I think it was the idea that he would be Drake and Joe Pesci would be like Sully. Can you imagine that?
Well, yeah. So it's quite interesting because like the whole everything going into this film makes you worry about what the quality is like, especially as I got a free ticket from Sony to go and see this film. So if you bought if you pre-ordered the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection, is that what it's called? Which is basically the PS5 version of Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy. If you pre-ordered that or bought the £10 upgrade, basically Sony gave you a free ticket to go and see Uncharted.
Which kind of confused me, because I'm like, the people who you kind of need to attract aren't the people who are buying the game. They're going to go and see the film anyway. Though surely those are not the people who you need to encourage. It's the people who aren't buying the game that you need to kind of get on board.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's like, I got the free ticket, but I didn't really fancy going on my own. So then Chris came with me, so he bought a ticket. So it kind of does, like, the people who were going to see it anyway, they get the free ticket and they encourage other people. Like, it's a bit like that word of mouth thing, like getting bums on seats, and especially with maybe some COVID apprehension, it kind of guaranteed, a few people in the cinema.
I think it's not also about Uncharted. It is also about, this is the launch for PlayStation Productions, which is like the film company, and you get that incredible kind of logo at the beginning, which is really kind of reminiscent of the Marvel one and what DC is doing, where. And and it's worth saying that down the line, other projects I think include Ghost of Tsushima. They're doing a film version of that, and rumored as well is Jak and Daxter.
Yes,
and there's also the Last of Us TV series, which is dropping next year as well, which is also part of this. I think a Twisted Metal as well TV series.
Twisted Metal TV series.
I know, it's so bizarre. So like, this is as much a launch for that as it is the film itself. And for those who aren't aware of Uncharted, it is. We've spoken about this at length. It's like some of our favourite games of all time. We did a top 100 ages ago. Yeah, it is. It's just it's the most intensely replayable. It's like Romancing the Stone. It's a globe trotting treasure hunt of wisecracking, of what over subsequent games became about character relationships as well, more and more. It's about treasure hunting. It's about solving puzzles. It's about action. It's about incredible set pieces.
The film is about none of that.
Well, the issue is ultimately when you've got a video game adaptation, the issue is that, I'm used to playing an watching Uncharted for like 8 to 15 hours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm watching a film which is remarkably, obviously, shorter than that. Just under 2 hours this film is at. And there are those similar touchstones there. There are certain familiar set pieces that echo some of the stuff in the games.
Mm-hmm.
It begins with one of the flashbacks in Uncharted 4, where it's about the relationship between Nathan Drake, who is an orphan, and his older brother, in a foster home. And that's borrowed from number 4, say, for example. And they separated at a very young age from each other. Tom Holland plays Nathan Drake. He grows up. He's a bartender, but he's also pickpocketing customers that come into this fancy bar. And it's through that pickpocketing that he becomes acquainted with Mark Wahlberg's character, Sully, who takes him on as a partner on a project he's doing to essentially steal a golden cross, an artifact, which is a bit of a MacGuffin, which is that it's essentially part of a puzzle to find this lost treasure, which came from, I think it was the Magellan expedition.
Yeah, which is also a reference to 4.
Yeah, there is that there's very much that kind of, those touchstones, and particularly for the set piece in 4 as well, the final finale. So what you have then is them pitted against Antonio Banderas's very forgettable villain or antagonist, who's this rich Spanish businessman who is a descendant of the family who sent off Magellan to get this treasure. And he feels like, right, come on, I need to get this treasure back. My family's owed this. So it's about these two men and a third person they meet, who's Chloe, who's based on Chloe from the Uncharted games, though them three against the might of this businessman and these group of mercenaries they've taken on. It sounds like a very typical Uncharted game, doesn't it, really?
It's pretty much Uncharted,
Action set pieces galore. There's a lot to like. I like the characters. Mm-hmm. There is a lot to like. There is an issue that the trailer is exactly the film, pretty much. Everything that happened was what I expected would happen. And that's not me saying I know where this plot's going. It's because I've played a lot of Uncharted games, and Uncharted does, particularly the first 3, they do tend to follow a template per se, which I love. And I don't mind seeing more of that. But in a film, it's slightly different, where you have that lack of agency. Tom Holland's good in the role. I love the dynamic between him and Mark Wahlberg.
Mm-hmm.
It's very reminiscent of him and Robert Downey Jr. in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So those touchstones I quite like. I don't know if I quite want. I know we spoke about this, Sam. I don't know if I really wanted to see an origin story for Nathan Drake.
I think it's the biggest misstep that the film makes. I think that Sony kind of hamstrung themselves a little bit with casting of Tom Holland, that it is an origin movie, and I feel like Hollywood in general and cinema is just so obsessed with like the origins of things. So we also watched The King's Man at the weekend, which is an origin story of how the Kingsman came around.
That's a weird film.
Which was a weird film, which actually made me wish I was just watching Uncharted instead, actually. And I've heard that in the latest Poirot movie, Death on the Nile, there's an origin story to Poirot's moustache, which feels like no one ever asked for an origin story for a moustache.
That's not explored at all in that book. That is, like, unsurprisingly, Agatha Christie, an incredible writer, thought, shall I focus on an incredible murder mystery where there's thrilling intrigue at every turn, or shall we figure out what sort of facial
emotional
hair
trauma led to a man to grow a moustache?
God,
but it's not like Agatha Christie's got like those Tolkien appendices at the end of the final book, which is just
yeah. If you want to, you can read about the moustache, but you don't have to. Yeah. So Tom Holland's involvement goes right back to Spider-Man: Homecoming, because he was playing Uncharted 4 on the set of Spider-Man: Homecoming, and he was like, someone should make a movie of this, which is what everyone says whenever they play Uncharted for the first time. And at the time, Ryan Reynolds was going to be Nathan Drake, and he approached Sony because obviously he's making a Sony film, and Uncharted is Sony property, and they were like, "No, we've got all the casting sorted. Don't worry, Tom. See you later." So he sort of put it to the back of his mind, and then he pitched an idea to Sony that he had about a young James Bond movie and like the origins of how James Bond came to be. I don't really understand how a young James Bond movie works because most of the stuff he does is very adult.
James Bond Jr. Again, we don't need to know. That's part of the fun.
And so obviously I think it was that pitch to Sony about an origin to James Bond, which I think has put the idea in the mind that this first Uncharted film could be an origin movie, and therefore you can put Tom Holland in it. But then I don't really understand, because Tom Holland is like 25, 26, maybe 24 at youngest, and Nathan Drake in Uncharted 1 is probably about the same age. So it could have been totally done, in media res. That I don't think they needed to be an origin story. And Nathan and Sully are at their most interesting as characters when they're not bickering about if they trust each other all the time. And they've built up a history and a repartee and a knowledge and a way of working, which is fun to be a part of. But it wasn't until like the end moments of Uncharted or the post-credit sting that I was like, yeah, I'd love to watch a movie with these two characters now, because we've got over that. Oh, but you're gonna double cross. Oh, do you trust me? Oh, I've stolen this. Don't you trust me? And like amongst all the great set pieces and all the sort of razzmatazz and the thrill of seeing Uncharted on the screen and it being done with quite a lot of practical effects and attention to detail and little nods and little touches here and there. Like, I'm really glad it's done really well. Like, it's done really well at the box office. Like, I think it's definitely going to get a sequel, and I think the sequel will be really good. I think now they've got over that initial sort of misstep, that I think the sequel I'd be really looking forward to, because I could spend a lot more time with Tom and Mark. Well, Pete, you nearly made it.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Long-time listeners will of course remember the time that I got snowed in when I tried to go and see Sam.
Yeah.
Because this weekend just passed, we'd had it planned, didn't we, Sam? We had it planned.
We've had it planned since the end of last year, I think.
Yeah. Richmond sausages, Richmond bacon, eggs.
I bought so much bacon.
Right. So delicious vegetarian bacon, delicious and amazing card games we were going to play. We were going to really nerd out on collectible card games, weren't we? It was going to be a great time. And then, of course, the powers in the universe decided that no, once again, once again, my travel arrangements would be thwarted by Storm. Now, which one was it? Eunice?
I think it was
Yeah,
Eunice
Eunice
at
was
that
one
point.
of them.
Eunice. Yeah, Storm Eunice, which, if you're outside of the UK, might not have had Storm Eunice. It wasn't very good. Basically, Storm Eunice came along, which was a big storm, and it meant that people like me tried to travel to places, and then I was sat on a train, and then trying to get to Birmingham,
Anywhere.
which would then connect me to the next place,
The North.
up to the
Yeah.
north. And then basically we got to Gloucester, and the train just sort of stopped, and sort of sat there on in the train waiting around. Oh, I wonder what's happening, and get this bing bong. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're enjoying your journey so far. Unfortunately, there will be a slight delay to this service as there is a roof on the track. Now, I thought to myself, because as soon as I heard the bing bong, I thought, here we go, wrong kind of snow, leaves on the track. You know, that classic, that quintessential British excuse
like,
of we
yeah,
can't really be bothered to make the trains run on time. But no, there was a roof on the train track. So then they said, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull into Cheltenham. If you could disembark from the train and then continue your onward journey. I was like, yeah, cool, that sounds great. Got out of Cheltenham, and as soon as the train went away, there was an announcement saying all trains have been cancelled in and out of the station for the rest of the day. And I was like, oh, that's not good. So I never got to come and see you, which was a real bummer, basically.
Can I just take a quick poll of the room of something that happened before the storm? I just kind of want to get the opinions of Chris and Dan about this, because before you started the day before you were going to travel up, you gave me a call and we spoke about what your travel arrangements have been, because you'd yet to buy a ticket to travel.
Correct.
And you said to me, you said, right, the day before
The day before I was meant to travel.
just in case, one of us had got COVID or whatever.
Yeah, lots of COVID flying around. Yeah.
Fair enough. So you rang and you said, right, this storm is set to hit between 7 and 12 o'clock. When shall I come up? I'm thinking after 12 o'clock. So I said to Pete, that doesn't really make sense, because if the storm hits, then all the disruption's going to be after the storm. So it's not like it's going to blow through and clear everything away.
You might get
We'll
out
have a
ahead of
smooth
the
journey.
damage.
So I dare to suggest to Pete, well, surely the most sensible thing to do is come up before the storm hits. So get a train at like 5, 6 in the morning,
5 or 6 in the morning.
Yeah, perfect.
and then the storm will be behind you, and hopefully, you'll get here before it even lands.
Yeah.
Apparently that was a complete no-go.
I would say I understand Sam's idea. If that had been posed to me, I also likely would have looked aghast at my phone as you had suggested that I would leave, because that to me does feel extremely kind of early and would kind of affect the day. So I would understand if Pete's reticence. Now, leaving at 7 or 8
on a train at 5. Not get up at 5. Be on a train at 5.
I'm on your side, Pete. I'm on your side.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I know you
I think Sam was expecting other people to be
Yeah.
on his side,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah,
with
yeah,
you, Pete.
Because
I'm expecting people just to be reasonable.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
so am
Of
I.
course.
That was
a
my
little bit
point.
a little bit of I'll sacrifice a little bit of my sleep to go and see a friend.
a little bit of my sleep. Just a little bit. I mean, you need to be there at 5. I mean, just to be clear, Sam, you have to be dressed and washed, right? So you have to have got to the train station. I don't live right next to the train station, so there's a delay. So I'd have to be up at what? 3? Oh, just sacrifice a little bit of sleep.
It depends also if you're a morning person. I am a morning person, I'm one of those people that if I need to be at the airport 2 hours before, take off, to check in, I will be there 2 hours before, just err on the side of caution. So I would have probably taken the early train just to err on the side of caution, and then kind of rub my hands with glee that I made it through.
Yeah.
And the parallel universe Chris, who left a little bit later, is somewhere else, trapped in the UK.
Stuck in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
Cheltenham's a lovely place, by the way. I don't want to offend any listeners in Cheltenham. You've got a lovely town, but I tell you what, it's a bit depressing to be in when there's nothing going
when
in
you're
or
not
out
meant
of
to
it.
be there.
Yeah, when you're not meant to be there.
We had a sort of stand-in weekend, minus Pete. We always knew Dan. Of course, Dan was invited, but he couldn't make it. I realised we've gone this length without explaining that Dan was also invited.
Yeah, this isn't the first I'm hearing of it.
Well, didn't
How
get my
rude.
invite. So Chris and I still had a lovely weekend together. We did most of the things that I had planned with that I planned to do with Pete. We didn't play Flesh and Blood. We didn't play Pokemon.
As a mark of
But, you know,
respect.
Wasn't that
You know.
the entirety of your plans?
Pretty much, yeah. And to go to a beer shop and buy beer, which we did do. We went to Beer Moth in Manchester, and it
Very
was
jealous.
exemplary. I think my favourite thing was Chris carrying that bag back to the car at fear that it would break, so two-handing it in the pouring rain in Manchester, because obviously we were still dealing with the storm at this point.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
6 bottles of beer inside it in a carrier bag that felt like it was made out of cling film.
Because nothing was going to stop us going to visit the wonderful geek shops that Manchester provides. But yeah, we had a great weekend. You know, we watched The King's Man, didn't we, Chris? We watched the first episode of Reacher on Prime Video, which I've watched the next 2 episodes after it now, and it's actually really good.
Do you know, Sam, there came a point when I was showering at yours because Pete started this tradition where we don't take shampoo with us to each other's places. We just use the shampoo that's there.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's what happened to it.
And so, yeah,
I
so
always bring
was-
shampoo.
Well,
Didn't
have you ever
realise
wondered
this
why
was a
you're-
tradition.
It's a tradition for me and Chris.
yeah,
Maybe we
yeah.
didn't give you the memo.
But I was around at yours, Sam, and I was rooting around at the base of like all these various bottles you've got. I think,
Did
that
you use
one
Did
looks
you
too
use my
colourful.
wife's purple shampoo?
Nearly did. No, but I nearly used something worse. There was a white bottle at the bottom. I thought, that looks like the Aussie one, because for my hair, I remember using it at uni. Got it out, went to put some on my hands, and I looked, oh, hang on, there's a golden retriever on the label of this. Never used his dog shampoo. I would have walked out with a really glossy coat.
Now, did you, because you sent me before I was about to head up, you sent me a picture, or actually while I was heading up, as a sort of conciliatory prize. You
I
sent me a photo of you.
felt bad doing it, but I thought you'd like to be involved. Which is
Yeah,
why
well, it was thanks for thinking of me. You sent me a picture of you saying, oh, well, and sort of like we're standing next to you holding a copy of Horizon something, whatever it's called.
Forbidden
the new
West.
one,
Forbidden
Forbidden West.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you manage to actually get to play that?
Absolutely. I woke up at the crack of dawn whilst Chris
did?
was around. because usually we're always the ones up last and Chris is up first. But Horizon turned up on the 18th, like it said it would. And because I was saving money by getting the PS4 version, because the PS5 upgrade is free, I slapped it in and it comes with like a data disc. At least the PS4 version does. I don't know if the PS5 version does. But it comes with a data disc, and when you put the data disc in, at that point you can go to the store and just go, beep, boop, boop, I want the PlayStation 5 version. And it's like, great, 95 gigabytes. And you're like, good one. I'll see you in 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
So for the first day, it kind of just sat there downloading whilst me and Chris were doing other stuff. And then in the morning, you get that little notification on your PS app that says, Horizon Forbidden West is now ready to play. So I was up at like 7 o'clock in the morning and played for a couple of hours before Chris woke up. And I mean, I've probably put about 5 or 6 hours into it at the moment. And you know what? It's more Horizon so far. But it's still a very, very interesting concept to be in an open world, which tends to be an environment where you spend many, many hours in exploring, ramping up until you've seen it all, been everywhere, helped everyone. I mean, Aloy is literally called like the savior of the land. Like you are pretty much, there's statues built now to Aloy as you're wandering around. Like she saved the earth, and like it's really, really interesting now being back in that world, and for the storyline not to be like a fall from grace and her building herself back up again. Like she literally like wanders through this new area of the map as she's heading out to the Forbidden West, and everyone's just like, oh my god, it's the savior, it's you saved us all, this is fantastic. And they make very sort of short reference to why you don't have as much kit as you did when you finished the game, and actually kind of makes sense that she's been going out traveling, trying to deal with the after effects, the after effects of when she killed Hades, or thought she'd killed Hades, and therefore like she has lost some of her kit on the way. And what I really appreciate is that there's no like real like effort to get that kit back. You just kind of bump into the people and they're just like, you're the savior, I made this for you. And they're just like, here's another bit of kit. And with the first like 5 or 6 hours, I'm already like have got the gear, the same sort of gear I had after about probably like 12 hours playing the first game. And so far, the environment is very much like it was in the first game. You're in a different area, but the environment itself is very much the same. But I think that I expect it's going to change and become something very, very different in the next few hours. But I'm still really, really enjoying it.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to get a copy. So I got a copy for my birthday. So kind of time of recording, that was yesterday. So I've not had a lot of time to play it. I've put about 2 hours into it. I did a bit of time yesterday, I did a bit of time today. And kind of the points that kind of Sam makes absolutely right. It does feel a lot like Horizon Zero Dawn. I think, Sam, you did this previously, and I think I'm going to do it. It's just kind of, I need to kind of, even though the opening of the game does recap kind of storyline, I think I need to go back and, because there's a lot of storyline that I've just, it was a long time ago that I played it, and it's quite a complex storyline, so I need to kind of go back and revisit that. I mean, it looks, as you would expect, kind of beautiful. Obviously, I mean, the last game did anyway, and it just, the landscapes and the vistas that you come across, every time I kind of leave the room and come back, like, within like 10 seconds, I see something else that I'm like, oh my god, that is kind of the way the sun's shining through and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm playing some PS5, but yeah, it's kind of it is more the same, but it's just kind of that a very easy learning curve to get you back in the swing of things. Actually, kind of forgotten a lot about how it played. I'd forgotten how. I mean, it's funny, we talked about it earlier in the episode. It's how much like Uncharted it is. It is Uncharted in a kind of dystopian future. It's a lot of climbing and jumping and looking around and solving things and all that jazz. There are new kind of mechanics introduced, one of which Chris will be very, very excited by.
He knows, the grappling hook.
The grappling hook, which for Chris makes every game a top 10 game.
Definitely. Every game's improved by it.
But yeah, it is so far. I've got no complaints, but as kind of, I'm also at the point that Sam, you're mentioning, I'm at a point of like, okay, this feels just like I'm in a tutorial. This feels like I'm in a setup. This doesn't feel like the game it's going to become. I'm waiting for that point where something happens and suddenly it's like, boom, and we're off.
Yeah, even when that epilogue ends and you get to kind of the actual start of the game, which is pretty obvious, which is actually a beautiful start. Like I really felt it was really impactful. Like, even then, it kind of feels like, I think this still feels a lot like the first game. And I kind of want to reiterate that it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it means that I can sort of concentrate on Aloy and where she is at now. Like, everyone's super pissed off at her because basically she saved the world and then, like, just disappeared. And I find that really interesting. Like, she just doesn't want any attention on her at all and doesn't want any of the praise, just wants to carry on, like, trying to live this, like, virtuous life. And I think it's very unwelcoming, the game, to anyone who wouldn't have played the first one before. I think you'd be completely lost, and the mechanics come at you really thick and fast. Like like in the first game, it goes through lots of pains to be like, right, here is a machine. These are weak points. You knock these bits off. You learn about them. You do all this kind of stuff. And in that epilogue-y bit, like in that prologue bit, it's kind of like, yeah, we kind of assume that you know what you're doing. There's a little bit of a tutorial, but yeah, just, these are weak points, hit them, jobs are good. And you remember, don't you? See you later. So I'm still just waiting for the real game to kick in. But as Dan said, it looks glorious. The environments are denser and more interesting than they were in Zero Dawn. Like, handholds and things are a lot more hidden, and you have to really go out of your way to really find ways around certain puzzles and in certain buildings, which I really appreciate. It really brings the world to life. And like, also the character animations and the acting in it has really stepped up a notch. Like, there's that famous meme in Horizon Zero Dawn, that guy who's going to who's trying to commit suicide, and like it's just really, really, really badly acted. And here it's just like they've really stepped up their game. Like all the characters feel fully fleshed out, and the dialogue just crisp and fantastic, and just the whole bit of the world is just absolutely like has come to life on the PS5 in this version. It's great. But other than Horizon, which I did force Chris to play, or watch me play.
Sit,
over the
open
weekend.
your eyes.
We also played. What else did we play? We also played a game called High Score, which
getting busy with the Knizia.
Getting busy with the Knizia once again. Thanks to Kosmos for sending this to us, actually. And High Score is actually a game that when we go to AirCon, which is only a couple of weeks away, actually, which is one game I'm going to bring with me because I think it's just going to be great for those bigger groups. Like, I think we would all really love it around this table because it lets you do something which usually you don't let yourself do. Well, I don't let myself do, which is gamble. And I quite like games that let me gamble in a safe space because I'm very, very reckless and irresponsible. So I need kind of like a nice little safe space to gamble in. So this is High Score is like a push your luck dice game. So you have your normal 6-sided dice. You have 7 of them. You have 1 to 5 around the edge, but then instead of a 6, it's like this vortex. It's like swirly little symbol. And then you have these deck of cards. There's over like 20 of them or so, maybe 20 or 30 cards. And you shuffle them. You deal 7 off the deck and then put all the rest of the cards back in the box. And then that's it. The game begins. And you basically flip over the top card. And on that card, it tells you what the current rules and conditions for how scoring is going to work for this round of High Score. So the scoring could be something like it'll have a little picture of the vortex symbol, and if you roll that, it's plus 10 points for this round. And the card will also say stuff like how many times you can re-roll certain dice and how many of the dice you can re-roll, and if you can re-roll any of the dice at all. And then, as well as like what the vortex is worth and like how many times you can re-roll, there's another bit of the card which tells you what the actual scoring conditions are. So it might just be like the total value of all the dice is what scores, or it might be something a bit more complicated than that. So it might be something like only the dice that add up to 10 will score, everything else is minus from your total score. Or it might be only the dice that are at least in a group of 2 or more will score, or only even dice or only odd dice will score. So once you've sort of set the conditions and everyone sort of understands, then one person rolls and they roll to get the highest score. And then that's it, their turn over. And then the next player tries to beat that previous score, and it goes around the table until someone gets the highest score. And then you award points out to the rest of the group, depending on where they came, like first, second, or third. Then you do that, you just repeat that into all the 7 rounds until you see who basically got the most medals at the end. And me and Chris were like giggling idiots basically playing this game.
Oh, yes.
You know,
such a good game. And the last time I had a sensation like that was with another Reiner Knizia dice game, and that was when we went for your pre-stag in Frankfurt and we played Risk Express.
Yeah. It's you know, it's the simplest of, you know, concepts, but typical Knizia. Like, he just makes the simplest things really pop and seem interesting. And that idea of like turning over the card and like trying to get your head around like what's going to score you the best and what's the conditions actually are. And I think when we're playing it with more people, that feeling of, you know, watching the scores develop and the high scores being plotted around this little track that you get, and then it comes to your turn, you're just like, right, I'm really going to push it. Like, I think I can beat Chris's score. I think all I need to do is roll a 2, and then I know exactly where I'm going to be. And even like the turns before someone else takes a turn, it's kind of like, well, how much can I push this? I've got 20 points, and I feel that's kind of like all right, but once my turn is over, I don't get another go. So yeah, high score was really good, and that's coming to AirCon. That's coming to AirCon with me, as well as Cosmic Encounter, because I'm going to force you all to play it, because that's what I do on my birthday.
Yay!
I get one free game, and that's the game I always pick as my kind of like birthday game. What else? What else should we play, Chris? Should we speak about Almadi by Mathieu Bossu and Francois Gandon? This is from Funnyfox, but kindly sent to us from Hachette. You can tell I've had a lot of stuff waiting in the wings for people to come and visit. Almadi is like this tile laying game, and basically each player is tasked with like building this realm in front of them by laying tiles. And they have a board in front of them which is separated into like 4 different rows. So what you do is on your turn, you'll take a tile from this central marketplace, which also has 4 different rows. So if you take a tile from row 1 on the market, you've got to put it in row 1 on your board to build this tile. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And essentially you're like building out this realm. So you're building like palaces, you're building like oases and marketplaces, and you're building like caravans, the camel kind, not the holiday in Britain kind. And it's kind of like the typical tile laying game, a bit like, not very much, but a bit like Carcassonne in the terms of like you get points for how much you can associate the right things next to other tiles. So for example, if you get lots of oases next to each other, they'll score more than if they're all separately apart. And if you get like palaces next to marketplaces, they will score more than if they're separate, and lots of different things like that. But really, I think what me and Chris found most compelling about Almadi is you'll notice when you see the tiles that on the edge of each tile, it's either got an arrow pointing outwards, out to each edge, or it's got a symbol. And what happens is when you place that tile into your tableau, into this realm that you're making, if the arrow is pointing to the symbol on another tile that's orthogonally next to it, that symbol then that will then activate that symbol, which is like a special power you can use. And it works vice versa as well. So if you put your tile in and there's an arrow and it points to a symbol on the tile that you just put in, you get to activate that power as well. And these powers do things like allow you to buy stuff at markets, they allow you to move tiles around in your tableau, they allow you to like pick up these objective cards. And it was such an interesting, like the tile laying itself was interesting in terms of making sure you're grouping things together and putting things in the right way. But then there's also this other little thing where it's just like, but if I pick up that tile and put it here, it means I can activate this ability and I can do this, and maybe I can move this tile to activate that ability, which allows me to, and it was all this like domino effect of ever increasing complexity, which
it was interesting.
I really enjoyed.
You're almost building a little engine, aren't you, there? It reminded me a little bit of Wingspan, where when you do an action, you activate the powers, the brown powers in that row, and some birds, it does, you move them from one row to another. But it's about creating a little engine in there that and I don't think I actually fully appreciated that, because you get these objective cards as well, and a lot of them are around, okay, if you've got caravans arranged in this diagonal pattern, you'll score these points at the end. So I went in for that, and actually what I did was that's the equivalent of me putting all my chips on this, because actually then what that did was it took me away from scoring what big in other areas, if that particular thing is juxtaposed with this particular structure, say for example. But at least knowing that I can move stuff around stops you feeling a bit too frustrated that, well, there's no point. I'm not going to get that objective. It's set in stone now. And suddenly realising, oh my gosh, I put that there because I thought it'd be useful here, but actually I just realised I've actually activated this as well. Oh my word, where's this going to take me? Boom, 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 boom. That's very, very satisfying.
I think tile laying is becoming my new favourite genre. I think roll and writes are slowly being pushed out, and I'm finding, I think since we played A Gentle Rain, I've become more and more sort of enamoured with that puzzle of picking up something and thinking about exactly how best to utilise it within a space. I'm really excited to possibly going to try and get a copy of Cascadia at some point. But Almadi is certainly scratching that itch in the time being. But, Chris, these were all little amuse-bouches. That's right. Is your palate wet? Well, I can tell you about a game which is certainly one of the most interesting that I've played in a long, long time, and that might sound slightly hyperbolic, but let me explain Roll Camera, which...
Oh, my word.
So this is a game that's designed and drawn by one person, Malachi Ray Rempen, who does some webcomics under Keen Bean Studios, the Keen Bean webcomics, which you might recognise. And this first came to my attention when I saw it in Senet's top 10 games of 2021, and they described it as something. They described it as a game where you're a failing Hollywood studio and you've got one last chance to make a hit. And I was like, that sounds like a theme I have never encountered before in the board game genre. So I was immediately hooked. I immediately wanted to find out more about Roll Camera. And luckily, Keen Bean Studios were kind enough to send us a copy. And so, as I said, the premise of this game is you're a failing movie studio. You've got one last chance to make a big sort of hit Hollywood movie. And sometimes when we speak about board games, we speak about theme and we speak about, this is set in a science fiction thing, or this is a fantasy theme, or this has got the theme of you're all spies working underground, and some of them can feel quite thin or pasted on. Some of them can feel like after the fact and not really well implemented. But Roll Camera, if anyone ever asks me what is the most thematic game, I'm going to point them to Roll Camera and say I think this has got not only one of the best themes, but it's one of the most well implemented themes to mechanics games that I have ever played. And I think it's pretty incredible how it achieves what it does. So first of all, it's completely cooperative, and each player takes on a certain role, and these are filmmaking roles, obviously. So there'll be a director of photography, an editor, maybe someone will be the star, the talent of the movie. And how the game works is that you roll these custom dice that instead of numbers have images on them. So you might roll a dice that comes up with a camera or an actor, makeup, or a big explosion represents VFX and graphics. And you'll put those on different spaces on the board to activate different things and progress through the game. And the aim of the game is to basically film 5 scenes and create a film that has a certain level of quality, which is basically a film that isn't mediocre. Okay. Sounds pretty good. Isn't that what all Hollywood films are attaining for at the end of the day? 5 great scenes and it isn't mediocre. Bit like Uncharted. So the game starts with you basically developing a script, which is drawn at random, and the script, basically you draw at random a top half of the script and the bottom half of the script, and it will create some sort of whimsical title like The Last Grandma or The Horror at the Dog Pound or whatever.
Sure.
And essentially what that script is doing is giving you your end scoring conditions. So for example, if your script is a comedy horror hybrid, then if you can film scenes that are comedic and horror themed, you'll get more points at the end of the game. Basically, your film is of better quality, so you'll be able to move up of that quality track. Which, the moment I was sort of setting this up for the first time, that's when that theme starts ringing in my head, because of course that's what a good movie is. A good movie is something that really reflects the original intentions of the script. If the script is a comedy horror and I'm filming all these dramatic scenes, then of course it's not going to be a good quality film. So below the script, you then have these cascading deck of cards which represent the scenes that that you can choose to film, and they're all basically little storyboard sections, and each one depicts the certain type of scene it is, so comedy, horror, drama, or action, and then it will depict on it a certain set design and arrangement of props, and where to place the actors in terms to actually get that scene filmed. And even this, something that I thought was just going to be quite throwaway, is really thematic and plays into it. So if you had, for example, say a scene where two characters in your film were punching each other, in order to shoot the scene, you'd have to put dice down to replicate that pretty much 1-to-1. So you'd have two actors and then separated by a block. Then you'd have the camera pretty much parallel to the actors. You'd have the lighting rig behind one of them, and then in between the two actors, you'd have the VFX like explosion. So even that little like tableau that you're creating recreates that scene of like two actors facing each other, big VFX explosion in the middle, and like the camera and the lighting placed in the right place to capture that shot. But even before you've done all that, you have to build the sets. There's this like Tetris style puzzle in order to make sure that the sets are arranged in order to accommodate all the like props and actors and lighting rigs that you're going to need to film the shots. There's problems that occur to sets. You can set up production meetings with the rest of the players that are playing around the board, which is essentially how you make events happen and how you sort of get sort of like one-time bonuses. And I think my final best touch for how brilliant and how just outstanding this game applies its theme is, so once you've filmed your 5 scenes and you have a movie of certain quality, you win. And it's quite natural to think that, you know, the better the quality, the better chance that you've got to win. But you can also basically sabotage your film, because another way to win is to film 5 scenes but have a film that's so bad it's good.
Brilliant.
So the director has a special ability where they can get more money or more time to shoot this movie, but sacrificing the quality of the movie. So it was at that point where I was just like, yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. Like I couldn't have thought of a better theme for a board game, really, in order to like do all this, have all this interaction in this dice placement game. And just the fact that as a director, right, we're running out of money, right, we'll take some money out of the budget, but the quality's going to go down. And you can basically sabotage this film, like hire in cheaper actors, or you're taking longer to shoot, so the quality of the film's going down. But you've made a film that's so bad it's good, so you still win the game. And I think it's super clever, really, really smart.
I think, firstly, Dan, I think you'd love this. Genuinely, like you being a big film buff, I think you'd like this.
Yes.
Secondly,
absolutely.
Unlike, I could imagine in the wrong hands, this could be a very dry Euro game. It reminds, like I played The Gallerist a few years ago. I think, oh great, I love art galleries, brilliant. And what I got was a very dry, relatively abstract economics game that kind of took all the artistry out of it and just made it like some kind of Tory kind of depiction of that, pretty much. This isn't that. This is it plays quite quickly, Sam. I found it. Well, the time flew by, and because it's cooperative as well, I was playing the role of producer. So there's some variable player powers here as well. I was a producer. Sam, I can't remember who you were the lead actor, weren't you?
I think I was the star, so I had a power where basically I could change the script at any point if I wanted to. So basically wielding star power to be like, no, I want to make some changes to the script. Like that also felt super, on the button.
But it genuinely felt the stress of being a film crew, a producer, thinking, right, okay, I cannot solve all these problems because I need to prioritize the set. Which problems can I let just slide a little bit? And which ones should I be focusing on now? And it feels like a Kickstarter game. And what I love now is when I say it feels like a Kickstarter game, that's not to render it a disservice. That actually is to kind of show the quality of the components. So when you take those little storyboards, which look like they're hand drawn, when you lock that shot, you flip them over, and suddenly, whoa, we're in a scene. There's a line of dialogue there, and you're looking forward to, oh my word, this horror comedy we've made, The Last Grandma. These 5 random scenes can stitch together. What kind of a narrative is going to be made out of this? Oh my word, it really is. This was such a surprise to me. I've seen it in a couple of top 10s, but it's not, from what I can understand, it's not being talked about as much as it should be. Genuinely, I think this is such a good game. It is dripping with theme. This should be in everyone's top 10 most thematic board games, without a shadow of a doubt. And just for the novelty of alone of what film we're going to make this time.
I just want to do a shout out. So I just want to say a big thank you to Adamski, Wise Goldfish, and Matthew Dunstan. And the reason I'd like to shout those people out is those people have all sent in the last, I would say, few weeks, absolutely lovely emails and messages to us via a variety of different sources. And it's always just really nice to get those things. I'm not going to read them out. I'm not going to read out their emails. I'm not going to read out their messages. I just want to say thanks very much, folks. That was really, really lovely to receive those messages. It was really lovely.
It was.
It does put a smile on your face. You're like, oh, cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Somebody listens
Genuinely
to this.
touching.
We have
Yeah,
3
absolutely.
listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we are. A lovely little shout out. Listen, do you want to know what I got up to, Sam, while you were having your lovely weekend? Oh, I've played all my board games. Oh, I played all the hot new video games.
I know what one thing you did get up to, because I thought, I know what, I bet Pete's at a bit of a loose end this weekend. I've got no, Chris had buggered off, go and spend some time.
My
with
auntie's
friends or
60th.
whatever.
So selfish,
Yeah.
Chris.
And so my wife was away, my child was away, I was completely alone, thought, I know what I'll do. I'll text Pete, see if he'd like to spend some time together, like we were meant to do.
Yep.
Text Pete, I'm out having a few rums with some mates.
Yeah, I was.
I was like,
How
great.
convenient.
I was.
And then he texts me at like 1:45 saying, like a drunk lover, like, "Oh, you about?
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
just
yeah.
come back in."
Yeah, just like, you up.
Yeah,
It was like a booty call, but for video games, right? It's like
a boot up call.
A call of booty call.
Call of booty
Oh, very
call. Yes.
Call of booty call.
We did it, everybody.
And I was like, I'm in bed.
Winking smiley face. So I decided, okay, I'm going to play a nice, short palate cleanser video game. That's what I'm going to do. And
Oh,
it's a
gosh.
game that I've been looking at. So over the last 6 months, I've been picking up a lot more super ridiculously cheap Switch games, where I've been like, I keep seeing these on the cheapy cheaps, and I'm like, some of these have got to be good. And I do download.
You'd think.
I do download a few of them, and then I think I won't talk about these on the podcast because they are.
No, I love looking at Pete's like list of games he plays on the Switch, because it's mainly just like championship tennis. it's like, why did you ever think that game
It was
going to be good?
30p or whatever it was, right? So, and surprise, surprise, it wasn't very good. But I picked up a game called Paratopic.
Oh, hang on. I've heard of this. That's not
Mm.
that. Oh, that's not that recent as a game.
It's
is it?
not that recent. So the
I've played it.
You've played it, have you? Oh, okay. Well, we can compare and contrast. So, so this was developed by Arbitrary Metric, which I believe is a very small team, and it was then published later on. I believe 2 years later on the Switch. So this came out in 2020 on the Switch, and that was published by a company called Baltoro Games. And the idea of Paratopic, how do I explain this game? So the thing that dragged me towards it was, we've talked over the last couple of episodes about horror and about weird stuff, and trying to kind of create a sense of dread without resorting to something like Resident Evil 6's, like, you constantly die and therefore you don't feel like you're actually scared anymore, right?
Sure.
Building up tension. And this looked like one of those games. So the aesthetic of it is really striking. It looks like a very late PS1 game, so wobbly textures and all. Textures that are stretched across 3D models that are way too thin. There are human bodies in it whereby you'll see their face, and it's very clearly like it looks like, the best way I can describe it is like perfect dark face, right? Like that kind of like a few polygons that they've stretched over a photo of someone's face, and it's like, that'll do. And
Like the original Lara Croft.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, kind of like that 64 era, like PS1, 64 era kind of thing. And it's really deliberately made in that way. It's not like, oh, this just looks bad. No, like this is an aesthetic style that they have actually gone for. And it's a story-focused game. And the game that I think I can relate it to the most, and I've been sort of racking my brain about it. I saw a Rock Paper Shotgun article about it that made me go, oh yeah, it's that. It's 30 Flights of Loving, but it's a horror game, right? So it's like Jazz Punk or 30 Flights of Loving or any of those Rainbow games, in which it's taking you're in first person. It's definitely a story-based game. You know, some people might call these sorts of things walking simulators, but it's got a bit more interactivity than that. You can shoot a gun. There you go. That's put it above Dear Esther, hasn't it?
Put a grapple in front of it, and I'm in.
It's the one thing Dear Esther was missing.
Absolutely, an automatic shotgun. So,
Dear Blaster.
Yeah. So it's got that 30 Flights of Loving Jazz Punk-esque, like, cutting between sequences, right? So it's got that...
Yeah, the jump cuts.
The jump cut stuff. So it feels more cinematic in some ways, and I mean literally in the cinematic in the style of using jump cuts so that you don't have to watch a person walk across a room, right? Like, you don't have to just singularly keep one focused view of a person walking across the room, and then they get to the thing and then they do the thing. Instead of that, it just kind of cuts to the action, right? And that's quite disorientating in a video game, and it uses it to that best effect. And it's got choices, so there are achievements, funnily enough, in the game. You can go and see lots of different parts of. You can see certain things if you make certain choices. So, for example, you might choose a dialogue path that takes you off in a different direction. But I want to be clear, this game is like 45 minutes long, right? So it's suitably cheap. It's less than a £5. And I got it on sale because I'm that tight.
It's 30 pence.
Yeah. And a little bit more than Super Tennis Champs or whatever the hell it was called. And I think the thing that I loved it. And I think that this is my kind of horror. And I kind of touched upon this last time we talked about, like, horror as a
intellectual pursuit.
Video games as an intellectual pursuit. Yeah. There's something really smart going on. So this is a lot of walking simulators often get criticised for having linear narratives, right? Not much in the way of choice. And this doesn't have much in the way of choice. It doesn't have much, you're still kind of being led along a path, but it's not linear in quite that same way. You play a number of different characters. It's not entirely clear how many. I think maybe 2, maybe 3. It's all played from first person. And they have different jobs to do in this very strange, oppressive, I would say, almost like a dystopian ex-Soviet state gone wrong in the 70s.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, really, really weird. Like, there's kind of, like, dark filter to absolutely everything.
It's kind of like a place where the control of information is very is very, like, forefront of everyone's mind. What's that? The Lies of Others, that film.
Oh, brilliant
which
film.
I think is set in Germany or is it set in Russia?
It's about Stasi.
Yeah, so it's like that it feels like it's set sort of around in those kind of oppressions where, like, people would illegally, like, swap tapes with each other and contraband and, like, anything that was sort of deemed Western or wasn't sanctioned by the government is therefore harmful to people. And
there's discussions of, like, the border and of you needing to do jobs for people. So the different jobs that you'll do, there are these different vignettes that you'll go through. So, for example, at one point you'll be smuggling VHS tapes across the border, right? And you must not look at the VHS tapes. There's something strange a bit about the VHS tapes. We're not really 100% sure as to what that actually is. It's hinted at, but never quite confirmed as far as I can tell. There's another bit where you're an assassin, and you have to go and murder someone. Hence that gun that I talked about. And there's another bit when you're going out and you're doing photography in a forest, and you're finding these strange spaces, and everything feels unbelievably oppressed. And it's got that Akira Yamaoka sensibility of using audio to make you feel really disturbed and really uncomfortable. It doesn't sound like Akira Yamaoka's soundtrack. It's not quite as heavy on the grating metal, so there is a bunch of that. It definitely isn't trying to rip off Silent Hill, but it's got something that makes you feel really tense and, like, it's just a horrible space to be in at times. Fogging everywhere that kind of really leans into that PS1 64 era. But also it means that you feel quite claustrophobic a lot of the time, and a lot of the space is about a lot of the tension comes from being in spaces that either feel way too small and confined and kind of oppressive, or conversely really open and really strange, like really kind of wide open, and like you're in them and it's just you, or is it? And this kind of storytelling is the kind of storytelling I like in video games. I think sometimes we get fatigued when we play sequels, when we see the another third person action adventure, another open world thing, right? Like, and there's obviously room for those things. Like some of my favorite games are sequels, but I think for me, a lot of the thrill I still get with video games is when I see something really novel and different, and I go, oh, I've not experienced this before. And Paratopic certainly draws on, it's certainly got a lot to draw upon. It's certainly drawing upon some of the things I've talked about already, but it brings a lot of new stuff to it as well. There's moments of where you just don't feel, like, as I say, you don't feel comfortable in the space, but you also don't feel like you really know what's going on at any point. It's really unclear because it has this non-linear narrative that jumps about in time. And who are you currently playing as? That's an idea that it sort of leans into at different times. And it goes from moments of kind of extreme tension to moments of horror, to moments of like just out and out horror, to moments of levity, to moments of feeling really creepy. There's one really great line. There's always I always get excited about video games when there's always like a line that I think, oh, that's smart. There's a line in this game where you're traveling, and you've been traveling on this really long road, and this really long sequence is basically just you trying to almost desert bus it along this road, like just trying to keep on the road, right? And you're listening to this kind of gibberish on the radio station. You pull into this service station, and you have to fuel up. I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a line in there where the person who runs the gas station asks you a question, and it is unbelievably unnerving. And I literally had to pan my camera around to check about what this person was asking me, because I was kind of, it comes at just the right time when you're like, who am I playing as? Where am I? What am I meant to be doing now? Is this what is the environment? What should I be feeling threatened right now? And this one question just immediately made my blood run cold. It was really smart.
Interestingly, in that moment, I didn't pan the camera. I didn't know I could, but I think part of me was just like, I don't want to see.
Right.
Like, I'm just going to look straight ahead, and just as my character naturally replied, "Oh yeah, oh okay." So
the reason that I'm thrilled about it is, as I say, it does bring something original, but it also harkens back visually, but also tonally, to Silent Hill, and that's a series that has not really been, and it's not the same, but it's as smart as Silent Hill, and that's what I think I really loved about Paratopic. It feels smart. It feels like, and it isn't doing it in a sort of like, it isn't doing it in this like, this is a metaphor kind of a way, or like, aren't we clever because we know a literary reference? It doesn't do it in that way. Instead, it's smart in terms of the way that it pieces out the way that it does its storytelling. By the end of the game, you can feel, I felt so nervous that when there was just a jump cut to a perfectly peaceful scene, it just scared the heck out of me. It was just, I was walking down this thing and then suddenly a jump cut. And nobody's jumped out of a bush, there's no dog flying through windows or anything silly like that. But just the change in perspective was enough to make me go, Jesus! Like, it's really clever.
that was another episode of Staying In with Sam Turner, Dan Frost, Peter Winnington, and myself, Chris Darby. Just want to echo Pete's words there and just shout out again to Adamski, Wise Goldfish, and Matthew Dunstan. Thanks so much for taking the time to get in touch with us, and thank you very much for your kind words. Really do appreciate that. It's really, really lovely. As I've probably said before, I do this because I get to hang out with these wonderful people who I love to pieces, and it's just so lovely that people really like that kind of atmosphere we foster here. That's really, really lovely to hear. So thanks for that. And if you want to get in touch with us, listener, at all, there are many different ways you can do so. stayinginpodcast@gmail.com is a popular one. Also, you can kind of DM us via various different feeds. At stayinginpod is where you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all these areas. And we're not necessarily fishing for compliments, but if there's a question you want to ask or something you want to recommend, maybe you think we'd like this, then just get in touch. That'd be great. And always keen to find the next thing, really. One of the reasons, again, I love recording these podcasts is I can hear my mates recommend me stuff. It's great, really. So if you're interested in digging deeper into some of the games we talked about today, we've got a Steam curation page where all of the kind of digital games we talk about are archived there with our reviews. And likewise, we also have a Board Game Geek page where we do the same for our board games. There's also a website which captures everything together, stayinginpodcast.com. And, my own little labour of love, our Spotify page, where, and thanks to those who followed it, where anything we talk about on the pod, which has a kind of a soundtrack related to it, it'll go in our little playlists, and they're all around different kind of themes or motifs or different kind of moods or energies. So Strong Brew, for example, is more energetic and overdramatic. The With Sugar playlist is a little bit lighter and frothier and a bit ridiculous. The Chamomile is very relaxed, almost spa-like music. And the Chilled Iced Tea one is just those very chilled kind of tunes, really. So it's a different flavour for all these different kinds of moods, really. And we're really kind of stretching this tea metaphor as much as we possibly can. So if that interests you, you can head over to our Spotify page, and there are links in the show notes to this in terms of how you get to that. But other than that, stay safe. Thank you very much. And if you're in the UK, hopefully the storms will have abated by the time you're listening to this. And yeah, take care and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.